Good evening, everyone. We will begin our Board of Appeals meeting for the City of Holland. I just want to remind everyone that board members are regular citizens of Holland who have volunteered and have been appointed by City Council to consider applications to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Housing Board of Appeals, Construction Board of Appeals, and for accommodations for persons with disabilities. This board must interpret each application as it relates to city ordinances. This board is not empowered to rezone or to take any action that could be considered rezoning. The agenda is in the order that the applications were received by the city. The presence of 4 board members is required for quorum, and it takes 4 concurring votes to approve applications. We ask that when your application is called, that you come to the microphone, state your name and address. We will hear the applicant first, and then anyone supporting the application, followed by anyone opposing it. After we close the public hearing, there will be no other opportunity for further public comment related to that application. Decisions of this board are final and are effective on the day of the decision. Applicants may appeal decisions to the circuit court in accordance with state law. These meetings are recorded and are available live on the city's YouTube channel. And if there's no objections from our board, I'd like to get into our agenda with our first item, but on that, I just want to say that we have 3 items essentially to discuss tonight. All 3 are very well related, all by the same applicant. So although we must consider each of these 3 individually, and we will act and decide on each of these 3 individually, but in the interest of time and efficiencies, when you come up, go ahead and we can discuss at least all 3 or the general parameters around all 3. We're not going to go through the same thing every time for each one of them, but we'll discuss each individually. We'll have a public hearing for each of these individually because they do have some unique characteristics, each of them. But since they are largely the same, we welcome you to go ahead and discuss all 3. So if we could go ahead with our first item.
Yes, the first one is for 80 West 16th Street, application number 22.11Z. Randy Brower, on behalf of Building Men for Life, is requesting a special exception for a housing accommodation to operate a recovery residency at 80 West 16th Street. He is requesting 8 unrelated persons to live together as a family, where 6 were previously approved. The Board of Appeals may approve this request if certain conditions are met.
All right. And I believe our applicant is here, so at this time, go ahead. And again, we can discuss all 3 or the general, parameters around all 3 of these applications. Just like I said, in the interest of time, so go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, hey, thanks for all of your time and your volunteering tonight to hear what we want to do. First of all, Building Men for Life has been in Holland for 14 years. It started in 2008. We have 15 homes and we house 94 men, which we provide a safe, sober living environment for. So on the first one, 80 West 16th Street, when we first came to the Board of Appeals, it only had 1.5 baths. So we needed to add a shower in order to be in compliance with the MAR standards, which says you need 1 shower for each 6 men. So we did some remodeling to 80 West 16th Street. We added a shower at our expense, about $5,000 to put that shower in. And now that will allow us to also comply with the MAR standards that we can house more than 6 unrelated adults. So,
if I may, just define MARS, I'm sorry, or MAR?
MAR
Yes.
is the Michigan Association of Recovery Residents.
Thank you.
They come and do an inspection every year. City of Holland does them every 6 years. Well, no, they do them a little, if we can get a 6 year, it's nice, but.
And Randy, can you introduce yourself so that we know who you are?
Okay, Randy Brower, and I live at 284 Orlando, Holland, Michigan.
Okay.
So that's the 80 West 16th, and I feel that there's adequate space there to have those guys. We actually have one bedroom now that's a two-man room that is not occupied. And it would be, you know, the beneficial thing is it's not really a financial need, although finances are tight and everything's going up in price. Our rent has gone up $30,000 this year. Utilities, you all know, have gone up 15 to 20%, I would say. But the basic thing is to provide a safe place for a couple more men, you know. So they can be in a structured program where we require them to attend meetings during the week, turn in documents each week that saying that what their progress has been on their goal setting, and I think that's the most important part, is that we're helping two more guys along. You know, Building Men for Life is a ministry, and it's also a 501c3. We do get quite a bit of donations that keep us out of the red. So, anyway, would you like me to go to the next house now on?
Well, is there unique circumstances on 80 West 16th?
Other than it's a nice big house. It's centrally located in town. This makes it real nice for guys that are in recovery to get around. Most of our guys don't drive. They do have to seek employment or be employed. And the unique thing about it is I think it's just a beautiful home that we've done some remodeling to. I don't know if any of you have been by the place. Our house manager, our live-in house manager there, is obsessed with keeping the yard looking nice. So he waters it daily and he keeps it looking really good. The inside of the interior, I believe we got a 6-year approval from the city on that house. You can for rental inspection, which is great. So all in all, I think that house is being run very well. It's a good program, and the guys that are there are making improvements in their life, becoming self-sufficient.
As per your your request to go from 6 to 8, and you know, you're asking for an increase in 2 of the 3. One is a new one to be considered. But can we talk about, or can we ask you some general questions about the overall need? And, you know, I guess a question I have is there do you have an active waiting list now? How many men are on that waiting list?
Yeah, we always have an active waiting list of about 5 to 15 people.
Okay. And you said there's 15 homes that you operate within the city, or is that just
It's in Ottawa County.
in Ottawa County?
In Ottawa County. We've one in Allegan County, just over by TR Yachts on that side, and 2 in Holland Township.
Okay. And then, and you said there's 94 men in the program now
Today.
housed, okay, through, across those 15 homes or 15 properties?
Properties.
Okay.
We have the big house on Country Club Road, the old school we remodeled. There's 16 men there.
Okay.
What can you tell us about the day in the life of one of the occupants? I mean, obviously get up, eat.
Get up, have breakfast. If they're employed, they have to go to work. Everyone has to go to at least 4 meetings a week that's related to their substance use disorder, which would be either drugs or alcohol. So they would attend one of those meetings and get a signed sheet that says they were present at that. Some of the guys that are new are doing outpatient treatment where they'll be gone for about 4 hours doing treatment. And they're the newest guys that come into our program. They go to Samaritox or to the OR program for more intense counseling. And so if they're on that schedule, then, you know, that part of the day is taken up with transportation, getting back and forth to different places. Some of them that we do ask them to seek employment, so they're out trying to find a job and
Sure.
and doing that sort of thing.
So you have some meetings, you have seeking employment, other things. How do the occupants, the residents, I should say, get to these meetings, go to look for work?
Okay, we do have 2 vehicles. We have a cargo van and a little shuttle car that we do run them around too, but that's part about being independent is finding your way to get there, you know?
Okay.
It's part of their responsibility to make sure they get 4 meetings. Now, if we have a van that's going, they should get in it, you know? And yeah, that's one of them, but we don't really try to cater to them too much. I mean, it's one of the
Supposed to be
things that
independent,
guys gotta learn to be a little more independent, you know?
Some of the
So,
guys have cars, or?
Some of them do,
Okay.
some of them do.
The cost involved, what's all supplied to them as a resident of the home? Do they have to provide their own meals? Do they have an allowance for that? Do they eat in a group together? More of the specifics of how the home is operated. And the other thing I would ask is, are there meetings? Are any of those meetings that they're required to attend, are they at the home?
No, most of the meetings are outside of the home, because they're registered meetings, registered AA meetings. We do run a Bible study at our office on Wednesday night, which is called Christians in Recovery. That's one that we do provide right at the Country Club building. But otherwise, we do have 2 on-staff recovery coaches that work with these guys on a daily basis too. They help them to work out some of the solutions that they're having with transportation or with employment or getting an ID, you know, getting their social security card. Half of these guys, they have lost everything, you know. So getting them at least enough on their feet that they're able to go out and you know, find employment. As far as meals together, they'll do that on weekends, you know. Most of the guys come and go and do different things. They still have their family ties, some broken families where they'll want to go home for the weekend and then they get a pass to go out, and especially over the holiday weekend, Thanksgiving, we had quite a few guys that went out for the weekend. But then the guys do, the Holland Rescue Mission's been wonderful with donating. They donated us all the turkeys this year, so every house got a turkey, and, you know, the guys, the Fixins, they did that up in Community Action House, and, you know, all the other places that we partner with have been so generous. You know, the community here is fabulous, but the guys do have to purchase their own food. A lot of them have the bridge cards through Community Mental Health, and some of the newer guys get the benefit when they come in. Their first 2 months of program fees are paid, as long as they comply with all the outpatient treatment requirements. So that's a good deal. But otherwise, each guy's responsible for paying $150 a week or $550 a month. So that's our program fee in order to remain in our program. So they do have to have an income. So if they don't have an income, then they can stay at the Holland Mission, you know. So a lot of guys, take a lot of guys that graduate from the mission. We get a lot of guys that come in from treatment centers, and a few guys that come from jail. So
Kind of bouncing around, but how big is the house on 68 West? You have a sketch and it just shows the main level. Excuse me.
The main level?
The main level is 892, it looks like, but you occupy and use the upper level also.
the upper level is the housing area. The lower level is our office. So,
Okay, so there's living, dining, it says 1 bedroom down, that's for the.
80 West.
oh, 80 West, okay.
Am I in the right?
Tricia, do you?
No, I'm just
I
kind of.
don't know.
Tricia has square footage of everything.
Well, we're talking
Yeah.
about number of rooms and number of occupants and those
okay.
types of things, and the size of rooms and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
you can kind of equate it to the square footage of the house too, you know?
Right, right.
I mean,
Well,
what,
Upstairs, there's
four
four.
rooms,
bed-
four rooms in A house is not the same as 4 rooms in B house.
Correct.
500 square feet different.
Right, right. There's 4 bedrooms upstairs, and all the bedrooms are bigger than 12 by 12, I would say.
Yeah, I have a floor plan for the second floor. It looks like the second floor is 1,000 square feet.
All right, so that's just under 1,900 square foot, that whole house.
There are 4 bedrooms on the second floor, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 on the first floor.
Right, and that's the resident.
That's the
coach.
house manager, lives on
House
the main
manager,
floor
excuse me.
downstairs,
Okay.
yep. Uh-huh.
So the occupancy calculation based on our property maintenance code that we use for all of our rental properties is 12 people.
Okay.
Okay.
What is what's the average length of stay for your,
For our clients, I would say 6 months to 2 years. So some guy, and we feel that at least 1 year is good. If a guy has 1 year of sobriety, he's on his path, he's on the right road. He's got employment, he's probably got a transportation worked out. So usually in a year, we have some clients that just like living in the home, and they've been with us for 4 or 5 years. They like having a safe environment, and cost of housing in Holland is quite high. We had a few guys that have gone out and got their own place, and when you're figuring $550 a month, and that's all you get. That includes your utilities, cable, laundry, everything that we provide at the house. That's pretty cheap. So it would be double that if you found a 1-bedroom apartment in town here, I would say.
Do you have a maximum, at what you say? Because you had mentioned that there's, usually 5 to 15 fellows on the waiting list. Do you have a maximum ceiling of okay, you've been here for 5 years, this space is needed by someone else who's trying to recover from an addiction, and we need your spot. You've got to head out and find an apartment of your own. It's time for you to leave. Do you have to?
I don't think I've ever done that, but we do have 2 levels. Now, we have level 1 houses and we have level 2. So a level 1 house is like 2-man rooms, so that when you come in, right away you have a room mate, and then there's no televisions in the rooms. And when a guy is in that, he'll stay in that for 2 months to 6 months, and then he'll move to the level 2 house, which are usually single-man rooms. They usually have television in the room. And it's more like, just a regular living area. I think more and more when in the level 1 houses where there's 2-man rooms, those guys are the newest. They're really working on their recovery. It's good for us because we have accountability of 2 guys in 1 room. If one's having a problem, we know about it that day, So, obviously things aren't problem-free. Addictions are addictions, and they're a big problem. So we're gonna have them, at least it's in a controlled environment where we have somebody there that we can call it out right away, get the guy. Hopefully he doesn't have to go to the ER or someplace like that. We can get the guy detoxed and try to get him back on his feet as quick as possible. So that's I've never told anybody they had to move along. I don't know, I guess we just have to keep growing, huh?
I think you'd mentioned it, maybe just for one property, but for all 3 properties, is there a manager living on site?
Yes, every property has a live-in house manager.
Okay.
Yep. And they're usually a guy that has been in the program for a while, knows the rules and requirements. And then we do have, for like the level 2 houses, we have he's a recovery coach, but he's kind of our accountability. He'll go there and drug test. All the guys get drug tests twice a month, and breathalyzed twice, at least at a minimum of twice a month. So, but he's works evenings, he takes the car around and goes to any problem areas, but he does a nice job on keeping up on the testing, so.
Are all of these houses level 1?
Nope, we have 4 level 1 houses. 80 West 16th Street is a level 1 house, so those would be 2-man rooms. And 439 West 21st Street is also a level 1 house.
Okay.
And the 47 West 17th, that's our newest house that we added, and we're only asking for one additional man there, one over the 4.
And that's a level,
That's a level 2.
it is a level 2,
Yeah.
okay. I
Each guy
didn't
there
want to
has-
assume, but you
Yeah.
stopped there and I
Yep.
figured.
Okay.
I want to hear you say it, all right.
Yep.
Gotcha. So outside of creating a second full bath, nothing's really changed in the house or anything like that? Nothing's
Nope.
changed operationally, physically changed or anything like that? You got the second full bath, established a second full bath
We did, yeah.
so that you would meet that criteria,
Yep,
bath to client.
right.
You mentioned that MAR has a list of criteria that you need to meet with your housing. Was that provided to the city, or do we have access to that also? I don't know, was that? Because it sounds like they have some pretty stringent rules.
They do, they do.
I
Okay.
know
I
that.
do happen to have Jeff Ventries here, who is the president of MAR, right? Is that correct? President of MAR in the state of Michigan.
We
So he
sent
and-
you everything that was provided in the application, but I think that's a lengthy booklet, is it not?
Oh,
Of
yeah.
all
Okay.
the
And
things that are
about 10
required in the
videos.
houses?
Probably
Yeah.
not,
I don't know that they could have summarized it in a one-page format. But if you have specific questions, I'm sure they can answer them.
okay.
Right. I think MAR is more associated with the safety and the cleanliness of the homes. Fire extinguishers on every floor, smoke detectors in every room. No matter if it's grandfathered or not by the city, we need to have those in every room.
So
Carbon
sort of like in
dioxide
addition to the
testers.
city, you've also got MARR, MAR is also checking to make sure that your
Yeah.
residents are safe and well.
Yep, everything's in compliance, and the house is clean. That's one of their big things, that cleanliness. They like it to look like a nice home, you know, so, and it's good.
That cleaning, they keep it up to.
The guys that live there do. Yeah, they're responsible for it. We have a posted chore list each week. The guys get assigned a different chore. And then we have a coordinator that kind of monitors that are doing their chores. And for having a bunch of guys, it sometimes is challenging to make sure that the beds are made. That's a requirement of MAR, making the beds, and keeping your dirty clothes up off the floor. So we provide all the guys with a hamper, and then to make sure that all prescription medications are in a lockbox. So we provide every guy that comes in with a lockbox that he can keep his own prescription meds in if he has them, so that they don't come up missing, is the thing. So, yeah, they have a great program, the MAR program. Sometimes I'm not really looking forward to another inspection, but, you know, it's part of running a good program, and I think it shows by when you come and take a look at the houses, you can tell that they're maintained, so.
So, one of the questions I have is, reading through the documentation that you, excuse me, I keep forgetting to turn my mic on. One of the things when I was reading the documentation that you provided, it almost sounded like, you're always trying to pair people up for that accountability. And then, you know, it's 8 is better than 7, 9 is better, 10 is better than 9. I mean, where does this go? How far does it go? I know you don't want to get into an institutional situation or more of a commercial building because it's not a home. It doesn't provide that
Right.
feeling, that nurturing of a home. I mean, if you had a really big home, where does the efficiencies drop off? I mean, is it really like 10, or is it 12, or is it 14, is it 16, or is the sky the limit, as long as you got enough bathrooms
Yeah.
and it's a residential home?
I don't know, we had one house that had a really long basement, so we put 4 beds down there, and that did not work really well. It was nice the house had a pool, but that one's off our list. So, yeah, I think having 2, I know that the Chester A. Ray program here in town, when you go through the treatment center here, you get paired up with a big brother, right? So that's a guy that's been there for a month already. The new guy gets, and it seems like a pair is pretty strong. I wouldn't go with more than that, you know. So if 80 West 16th Street, if we could go 12, that would be putting bunk beds in all the, you know, I don't think that's what we want to do.
When does the nurturing stop? When is too many too many? In a house, the
yeah.
nurturing house, not the institutional building.
Yeah.
Yeah,
With the house.
does MAR keep things pretty strict in terms of like guidelines for square footage of
Oh, yeah,
how
yeah.
many? Because I mean,
Right.
the city obviously has criteria for that too, but
Yeah, for room size, it does make, you know, I don't think being jammed in a group works that well. I think the 2 men, as far as how many guys in a house
Yes.
situation, you know, the houses, you would think, wow, that's a lot of guys. It would be kind of crowded with 8 guys, but you know, you got guys that are working different shifts. So 2 guys are working night shift, 2 guys are working second shift. So there's kind of a different flow where there's really not that much usually going on during the day, you know. And then if they, you know, we try to pair guys that are working 3rd shift together, and so they can try to get some sleep, you know. So I would say what we have going, if we have 8 at the one house and the bedrooms accommodate 2 per person, I think that's a good fit. So, and then over at 439 West 12th Street, we're asking 4, where we get 10 unrelated adults. But that house is laid out really nice, where it can house those guys all in 2-man rooms. We have 2 single-man rooms, 1 up and 1 down. That seemed to work out very well. So I don't know when too much is too much, but I know that
There's no ceiling in your mind.
no, I think if we're helping somebody, I think that's the main purpose, you know.
I was just trying to figure out the efficiencies.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it was based on, you know, the house, the nurturing,
Yeah.
not too many, but accountability,
Right.
that type of thing. So I was trying to get it in my
Well,
own
I know
mind
I
what
tried
that
girls'
meant.
housing for a little while, and you could not have enough bathrooms, so it just didn't work, you know. So they needed more than it seemed that the guys needed.
Any other questions from our board? About
Yeah, I was gonna say about 80.
any
I'm
more
not sure how you
questions?
wanna do that.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Sorry,
any
I
other,
put you in a
any
pickle.
general, you know,
General
questions or specific questions about 80
Got a-
West 16th Street?
I've got just a general question for you. I'm curious as to what inspired you to start the organization.
All right, well, I'm an alcoholic, and let's see, I got sober 22 years ago, and you know, part of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is step 12, which says if, you know, having completed the steps, I've had a spiritual awakening, and I want to help the next alcoholic. So that's part of my own program and my own work to keep me sober and clean, is to work with others, right? I was employed for a while with Ridge Point Church in 70x7, running their recovery program and their AA meetings and their NA meetings. And then one thing led to another, and we really needed some recovery housing. There were some Oxford houses that were around the state of Michigan that seemed to be pretty successful. And I just felt called to do it. So I didn't think it would be a job. I know the first 2 years there wasn't any money, there wasn't any income, I didn't get paid. I still had my machinist job, and but I guess it's been kind of wild watching the Lord work. I still really don't know how all the finances work out all the time. I'm happy for the donations from local businesses and churches because that keeps us out of the red. Last year, I think we got about 140,000 in donations,
Nice.
which was, just blows me away.
When do you, or how do you view the house's relationship with the neighborhood? When do you feel that maybe it doesn't blend with the neighborhood? Whether that's density of people, density of cars, density of adults. I mean, obviously, this is part of the conversation,
Those are all.
and it's coming.
Those are all
So
situations.
the question is, what do
Yeah.
you think?
Well, you know, the situation with cars, because sometimes you have a single driveway. So the cars, we limit the guys is kind of on a seniority basis. If there's already 3 cars there in a single driveway, like at 80, we can't have any more cars there, you know, so you can't get a car. Or we can move the guy around to a different house where there is parking available. As far as the neighbors in the neighborhood, obviously, if I say I would like to open a house next door to you, you're gonna go, I don't want a bunch of drug addicts and alcoholics living next door. So that's the not in my backyard syndrome, you know, scenario.
Sure.
And you know, and you can see that people have families, and there is fear. So we have to get past that fear, and say, hey, this is and I think the first time we were here, we had a lot of objections to Building Men for Life back when we opened, and we tried to eliminate that fear by saying, hey, we monitor our guys. They're in a strict program. There is a oversight. It's not we're just moving people in and that's it. You know, okay, they're in your neighborhood, you're stuck with it, right? I think most of our houses are safer than some of the other houses in town because these guys are not using. You know, they've stopped using. So I can say every guy that's in our house today is sober and clean, or they should be, and we do our best to check them. But, and then, you know, building a relationship with the neighbor, we have to notify all the neighbors that we are operating a program next door. Some of them are also rentals, so you'll get a new person in, and I'll go and introduce myself and give them a card. I said, you ever see anything funny, give me a call. And they do, so they either call me or Tricia, I think. But and then if we can help them out, you know, I mean, the guys, get some extra guys there. They can shovel snow, they can rake leaves, they can be a good neighbor. And we try to promote that they, you know, be a benefit to the neighborhood, you know, and try to eliminate that fear that.
Right.
some of
And
them-
my question wasn't necessarily the real syndrome of not in my backyard.
Uh-huh.
I acknowledge that.
Right,
But just the density of people. I mean, if you have a neighborhood where there's, you know, all primarily 2-bedroom homes, 2-bedroom, 1-baths,
mhm,
and you're putting rooms in the basement, and you have more people. Now, I know 2-bedroom, 1-bath, I can think of several who have 5, 6 people in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath.
yeah,
But the demographics, I mean, the cross-section's usually different. It's
right.
parents, maybe sister, brother, and maybe a couple kids,
Mhm.
not necessarily all men. So that was really the angle I was trying to get your feedback on.
I think most of our homes too are in the rental district of Holland, or rental homes. Most of the homes around us are rentals. And some of the more, the nicer neighborhoods, maybe the one out on, I don't think we'll be opening any houses on South Shore Drive. I've checked, but I don't, you know, there's some big houses there, and I'm pretty sure they're almost all empty. But, you know, I don't think That big one out by the lake, I like, yeah. So, yeah, as far as neighborhood, I think we have to we look at it, I look at the neighbors, so we got 3 houses on 17th Street now, east and 2 on West 17th Street. And I think they fit in the neighborhood pretty good. Seems to be a lot of activity all around, so,
Thank you.
yep.
I'm sorry, I had another question. Is there a requirement of the locality or where your clients are from? Do they need to be from the area, or are they, do you accept clients from Southeast Michigan or
We do.
Indiana or Traverse City? I'm just thinking
Yep.
something that, they might not be
We
exactly
do. We got a guy
what
that
somebody
just-
might consider local.
Yeah,
Not that, just, again, a curiosity is if you had any requirements for locale. I mean, obviously, if you want them employed, they gotta be employed locally. I mean, they're not gonna be working a job up in Traverse City or in
right.
Warren, Michigan.
Right, so we, most of our guys are from Ottawa County.
Okay.
We do have a few that have come from other counties. We do have one house in Allegan County. We do have a contract with Allegan County Community Mental Health. So we put the Allegan County men in that house. We do have a contract with Ottawa County, and we have a contract with Muskegon County. We get a few guys out of Muskegon from Health West, I believe it is, when they come out of their treatment program. But we really don't have any requirements. We've had a couple guys that have come up from Texas, their families up here, they had moved down, now they wanted to come back, they wanted to get their life back together. So it's kind of surprising, all the referrals that I guess we have, some of the treatment centers, Gilmore Treatment Center in Kalamazoo, there's Bear Creek Recovery up in Petoskey. I don't know anybody that would want to move out of Petoskey, but yeah, but they do seem to find us, and if we can, we try to accommodate for them. Some guys think that relocation is helpful. They get away from their community that they had used drugs or had a bad experience, and if they can come to this community, is good. So when we do all we can to help them succeed,
Level 1, level 2 houses, I mean, as you grow, is it usually 50-50, or is it a moving, breathing thing depending on the needs and requirements? I guess,
Well-
where are we going with this level 1, level 2? Because obviously it affects,
Yeah.
the amount of people you're looking at putting in these houses. So I have
Yeah.
no clue how this all works. So I
Well-
guess, can you give me some understanding of how the level 1, level 2, and where it's progressing in the future, or how you're?
The level 1 houses, there are more guys there, and there's more accountability there. They have a curfew at night where they have to be in by 10 o'clock. There's certain rules in a level 1 for more newer guys, more accountability. I like a bigger house. If we could find a bigger house, bigger places that would hold more, I would be all for it. Because then we have those guys from there, we actually have some guys that move from there. They either move right back with their wives and their family.
Or they go to a level 2.
Or they go to a level 2. So I do like level 1, because I think it has the most accountability, and you see a lot of miracles working there.
So there's a level-
There was down on South Shore, or not South Shore, what's 32nd, the Hallmark Rehabilitation Center.
Yeah.
50 beds. Man, I would love that building. I'm short $2 million. But that would be a beautiful place. We could even have a detox center there. We could have so much going on there. We looked at the building. Worked with the realtor, worked with the owner, and we just couldn't get anybody to finance it with the situation we have.
So do you have
So-
twice as many level ones as you have level twos?
No, we only have 4 level 1 houses
You only have 4 out of the,
out of the 15,
okay, gotcha.
so,
Thank you.
yep, a lot of smaller houses
Gotcha.
in town.
I think Nikki has a question, but as I look down the list of required conditions that the board needs to use for the findings of fact,
You might want to go there.
are there
No, Matt-
any
Matt was
other
trying to go there.
questions that you want to ask the applicant specifically related to the findings of fact?
Go ahead, Matt, you're all lined up there.
All right. So I think our first one is this request accommodation for a group of individuals with a disability protected under fair housing laws? I think we've already established that that's
And you
a
don't
yes.
have to run through all of them, just while the applicant's at the podium, before we open the public hearing and ask to hear from members of the public, are there general questions you would like answered by the applicant?
Right.
Because you don't necessarily need to run through the list till we close the public hearing and get into the deliberation.
Mhm.
But I'm just,
But it
we're
doesn't
asking
hurt.
questions.
Make sure
Kinda
all your
all over the
questions are
board,
answered
so-
now with the applicant, yes.
So I have 2 specific from the required ones that I really want to cover here, and then you guys can jump in after me. So is the accommodation necessary to make housing available for these individuals? So you were saying that you've got a waiting list.
We do.
So there's other organizations in the region that are providing housing, but you've still got a waiting list, and you always pretty much have a waiting list. Is
We
that
do.
correct?
Yep.
Okay, so there's clearly a need that establishes that you guys
There is a
need to
need.
be able to
Yep.
expand. There is a constant need by the sound of things.
Yes.
Okay. And then the other question would be, is there an alternative accommodation which could provide equivalent level of benefit to you, so, or your organization? So, that would be something along the lines of, well, could you house them in a different place? Could you buy another property to expand, rather than expanding where you are now? Could you expand laterally, I guess, I would say, rather than up?
Yeah.
And if I may build on that, what specific alternatives have you exhausted already before you've gotten to this point where you're asking on 2 of these 3 for an additional extension beyond the original extension from 2015? And on the 3rd one is a brand new when I say extension or expansion of more than what's
Right.
allowed.
Well, and that's kind of what we were doing with the 47 West 17th Street is we added a house. I looked at 2 other houses recently also to add houses, but the housing market is terrible. The prices are very out of proportion. To what we're kind of in standards of knowing what we've been paying, right, in the past. And because we do work with some good homeowners that like our program, but, so the 47 West 17th, we added that gave us an additional 4 beds. There's an availability to have 1 more to use all the bedrooms, and, so that's what we've been doing, and we are looking to expand. I did look at a house in Muskegon, which used to be an adult foster care, which could easily be turned over, and they had a reasonable accommodation already in place because of it was an adult foster care home. So that was up, but we were a little afraid it would be too hard for us to manage from that distance and things. We didn't have anybody that wanted to move to Muskegon. So, but does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
All of them?
Dan, you good?
I'm okay.
Good.
I guess when you say manage these homes, what's your business plan? What is the capacity that you're looking at as a business to run this? How many men?
How many men do we, to be able to run it? Or
To run your Building Men for Life ministry, do you have a business plan that says, hey, we want to minister to 125, 200, 300? What, do you have a business model that you're going after, or that you're working on or with?
I gotta say, probably no. We don't have a business plan. I know it's kind of started, like I said, it was something that I needed, and I needed to do for myself, and I needed to do, it wasn't, I need to help the community. I need to help some other alcoholics. Things grew. We very limited income or resources. You know, we couldn't get a bank loan for 5 years till we had some established business, right? Then get enough money to remodel and build the country club. So now we have a pretty big hole there, about 400,000 we owe on that yet. And the purchase of a couple homes that we have bought, which are just loans. But the business plan is, if there's a need, I think we gotta try to, I think we need to work on it, you know? Is Building Men for Life the answer for everything? No, there's other organizations. We have this new prison reentry program here that's working in Holland. We have a Hope Network that also takes more guys that have co-occurring problems, which would be some type of a mental illness, which is a basis of their drug use and alcoholism too. That we can't handle all those problems, you know? So it can go that way. How big is the need? I don't know. How big is the opiate crisis in the U.S.? How big is the new fentanyl crisis coming into the country? I know if I had to put my son in a box and bury him, I would think we got a crisis. So, and we have that. We have that. So, and I'm pretty sure every one of you knows someone in either your church or your family that has had that problem, or they're struggling with it, right? So our goal is basically to do what we can do. I love the relationship that we have with the city, that we're working together. I didn't know I had to work with you guys when I started. Nobody told me. I'm just gonna do it, right? But what a good fellowship it is now that we can work with you guys, and I know that you guys want a safe community, you know, and you can see it everywhere, right? So.
Everybody good? Go ahead.
Did I get through your list, Trish?
So what happens when you are unable to do this, let's say someday, and Tricia, this is for you too, what happens to this kind of, we've allowed this in this home, does this, and so you have to sell it or it can't continue? What is this, any thing that we allow to go forward? What happens?
So I can tell you from a code perspective that what they're requesting is a special accommodation for persons with disabilities.
Okay.
Which means that only people with a recorded disability can live in the home. And if they stopped leasing the homes, the home would lose the special accommodation because it's granted to these folks with disabilities. So if they stopped leasing a house, or if they sold a house and it reverted back, then they would have to meet the definition of family. Or if there was a different kind of accommodation needed, that applicant could come back to the board and request permission for their accommodation.
Good, thank you.
That's a great question. And then it's important to understand that these accommodations that, you know, that have been approved previously and that they're seeking now don't run with the land, if you will. They run with the lease on those properties. Okay.
They run with the occupants.
With the organization, Building Men for Life.
Yep,
Right.
so if, Randy mentioned earlier, prison reentry program. So if they wanted to operate that program, that would not qualify for a disability if it was only that.
Understood.
So if you looked at the previous findings of fact, I believe one of the conditions was that the board had previously put on the two homes that were approved, is that the special exception shall only be used for persons with disabilities. Non-disabled people shall be limited to 4 unrelated people per the ordinance requirement. And that was a condition that already exists at 80 West 16th Street and 439 West 21st.
All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you
Thank you
for
guys for your time.
addressing us and answering all of our questions and for your ministry here.
All right, well,
Thank
thank you. Good.
At this time, I would like to declare I'd like to hold a public hearing on 80 West 16th Street, and we'll now have that public hearing open, and anybody who wishes to speak in support of this application, go ahead, please come up, and I ask you to state your name and address. We don't have to go exactly in order. We can also take anybody who is also wishes to speak in opposition also, if they would like to come up and speak on behalf of this application.
Good evening, board members. My name is Jeff Van Treese. I'm a lawyer. I'm also a product of Building Men for Life's program. And I would like to say that the recovery community, because that's really what we're talking about here, is incredibly thankful for all of your time and your consideration of this reasonable request. I could only say a couple things. One is I've run MAR for 7 years now. And MAR is the only state affiliate of NAR. MAR is something that is funded by the state of Michigan to the tune of about $1.5 million over the next 2 years to bring RECCAP and to bring, RECCAP is a recovery capital system, to bring training. There's 20 hours worth of learning module system training that all the staff members at Building Men for Life have to take and successfully pass, and to really bring up the professionalism of recovery residences throughout the United States. So to that end, I thought I heard one question that I'll volunteer an answer on that perhaps was not asked, which was answered rather, which was, is 10 people in a house better than 8 people, and is 12 people in a house better than 10 people, and where do you ever get to that number where it's like, gee, we got enough? I'll tell you what the science shows on that. The science was developed over about the last 10 years, and it was based upon Oxford houses, and Oxford houses are typically 8-people homes, 8-person homes. So what we know from the science and the research is that an 8-person home is better than a 3 or 4 or a 5 or 6 or 7. There's some additional research done by Dr. John Major out of the University of Chicago that suggests that the best number, and I think that was the question, is something probably more than 10, probably less than 20. But it's all based upon the BOCA code, the building code of the maximum number of people that can live in the home, right? So with that, that is the demographics of what you've got here in Holland is mainly 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom homes. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for your time and consideration. And I could answer any questions anyone might have regarding the MAR certification process. Hearing none, I'll go sit.
Again, anybody who wishes to speak in support of this application, or anybody who wishes to speak in opposition.
Now, Dan, you're still talking about 80 West.
Correct, just 80 West 16. All right, then at this time, I will close the public hearing and turn to my fellow board members for deliberation and potentially a motion here. Yeah. I'll have a public hearing for each of these.
Gotcha.
Go ahead and push the button, Dave. I know you want to speak.
Well, I'm concerned that there was some financial talk about, and we really didn't ask the applicant about this, of what the implication of that is on the request.
I heard while we were talking about this specific location that it was not a financial situation. I may have misheard that, but that's what I understood when the
Randy.
applicant was commenting. At least on this specific location.
Well, any more deliberation, or maybe we can get a motion here?
I have a question, I think it's gonna be directed towards Tricia, about, years ago when this was approved, we had added the condition that there be a limit of 4 non-disabled folks. What was the condition there you'd mentioned?
The definition of family is a group of people related by blood, marriage, adoption, blah, 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 or 4 unrelated people. So they can operate a recovery residence with 4 unrelated people, and they don't need to come to this board at all.
Mhm.
They're here because they want more than 4. So the condition that was placed on the previous request was that in order to have more than 4, the people that occupy the home have to be disabled under the state definition. And if the people living in the home are not disabled, then you're limited to 4, per the ordinance requirement.
Okay, so all of the occupants would have to be, through legal definition, be considered disabled persons?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I think it's already been established fairly clearly that the recovering, those who are recovering, those do meet the definition.
That's
Because-
correct, yes.
So that's not, to be clear, that is not being, that's not
It's my understanding that anyone that's recovering from drugs or alcohol addiction is disabled
Correct.
under the state of Michigan's laws.
right, and we're not disputing that. That's not a discussion item here that we're disputing.
Correct.
Or, considering, in I guess we're considering the fact that they are, or requiring them to be. But I'm not hearing any doubt that they are.
We don't have to add that as a condition either.
It's
right?
already a
'Cause we were-
condition, correct?
We are operating under the understanding
You can
that
restate
it
it.
would
So
be.
We
on the
can restate it,
question
sure.
sheet, we would recommend that you add the stipulation, just as a reminder, that if you choose to grant the accommodation, anybody living in the house must be disabled in order to qualify to get the special accommodation that they're asking for today. And like we talked about previously, if the program dissolved or if they chose to no longer rent the house, this particular request does not travel with the property. It travels with the disabled people asking for the request, which is Building Men for Life
And it
program
doesn't matter if it's
participants.
leased or owned, the building.
That's
The
correct.
house. Okay, I
That's
just want to make
correct.
sure that was clear, because we were talking leases earlier.
Mhm.
Okay. Back to staff. I guess, is there any undue financial or administrative burden on the city? I don't hear anything, but I don't know, and that wasn't specifically asked of the applicant. But it is one of our criteria that we need to consider.
It is,
Can anybody respond to that?
yeah, that is a good question, because it's not exactly something that the applicant.
Right, he can say whatever he wants. What's the reality for the city?
What is the reality for the city?
So in the application, the applicant did answer that question in the materials they submitted, that they did not feel that their program was a burden to the city. I can tell you for our department, we inspect it as a rental property, just like we do all of the other rental properties in the city of Holland. I did review the complaint history on all of the properties in the application, and we don't have an unusually high number of long grass or garbage. It's
Versus any other rental in the.
versus any other property in the city of Holland.
Right.
There does not appear to be a burden to the city by them
Financially
operating
or
these
otherwise.
houses.
Okay.
So my question, I think where I'm struggling is we still have this 500-foot issue with 17th Street. Do we have to make a decision on 80 West 16th before getting through 47 West 17th? Because I think for me, going up to 8 on 16th and then allowing 17th also for more than the 4, they kind of go together for me.
So each application has to be decided based on the merits of the application. Vince can correct me if I'm wrong. So this application is first, so you do have to make a decision on this application before you get to the next one. But the decision that you make could be with the knowledge of what's coming next.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Do we need to discuss that now?
Probably.
Or,
John
I was
looks confused.
anticipating discussing it when we went to the second house, but,
Yeah, but kind of, I think you bring it up at the appropriate time, quite honestly, because a 5 and a 6 is different than an 8 and a 4. I mean, seems like if you were looking at making it, spread it out a little bit, that reducing that, not allowing the 8 on 80 West and allowing on 17th would be a more balanced approach if in fact the 500-foot separation was an issue. So I think the timing is appropriate, I think. Unfortunately, our knowledge in our minds versus where we're going with the second one is, I guess that's how I feel about it. I guess you know what's in my mind.
I think you guys know what's on mine, based on what I mentioned during our study session. But as far as the 500 feet is concerned, I would be, I would see it more as a problem if they were very close together and facing the same street, perhaps. There could be an issue of parking, but these guys are facing different streets. They're not adjacent in that regard, so not sharing a street. And we've also established by talking with the applicant that they do limit the amount of automobiles that are on the property, and they're providing transportation for the guys that do not operate vehicles themselves. So we have not heard yet from neighbors that there is a noticeable and annoying bit of traffic going about with the density either. So I feel satisfied based on what I have heard and learned at this point.
I'm waiting on a motion. Anybody can make a motion at any time.
Okay, then in that case, if no one else has other questions, want to discuss anything else, I'd like to make a motion with the condition. So my motion would be to approve. Do I need to say the condition now or at the end after findings of fact?
Now is good.
Okay. My condition would be, for approval, would be that we add the condition that all of the occupants of the residence in question be under the legal definition of being a disabled person. So we would not allow them to bring in folks who are not disabled. This exception to the rule, this special treatment is specifically for those disabled folks who are being protected under fair housing laws. Is that clear enough? Okay. All right, on the findings of fact, if I can, but do I need a second?
Support?
Okay. Thank you. So my findings of fact would be this. I'll start with I mean, I just kind of reiterated it with the condition, but the requested accommodation is for a group of individuals with a disability that is protected under fair housing laws. So that's yes, and with the condition, it will stay that way. Is the accommodation necessary to make housing available for these individuals? I would say yes. Not only is the housing market pretty difficult, but the applicant has established that they are constantly being asked for rooms. They have a waiting list. That along with the housing market is enough to suggest to me that accommodation is going to be difficult for folks to find, and something like this expanding would be a good idea. So next, will the housing be used only by persons with a disability? Again, that condition covers it. It should be, it's already yes, but the condition will keep it that way. Does the accommodation impose an undue financial or administrative burden on the city? I would say no. I don't believe that it's being treated in such an exceptional and strange way that it's requiring lots of people's attention and causing undue stress and expenditure. So my next one would be, does the request require a fundamental alteration in the nature of the city's zoning program? I would be very surprised if it did. I would say no. It does not seem to be, because we are specifically dealing with disabled individuals at this property. This is not going to require the city to change its zoning. And then finally, is there an alternative accommodation which may provide an equivalent level of benefit to the applicant? I would say no, because again, we are looking at tight housing markets, and we are looking at a organization and organizations broadly that are helping folks like this. These disabled people are not making so much money that they can deal easily with the increased cost, not only of housing, but in every other regard we're seeing. I mean, we're all experiencing it right now, in one way or another. And I think that it would be very difficult, not impossible perhaps, but it would be very difficult for them to provide adequate alternative accommodation.
So go ahead. I have a question.
Go ahead.
So my question is, we have other considerations to consider. Can those be included as conditions? And I guess I gotta ask Mark if,
Matt.
actually Matt.
Mark's my brother.
Sorry, Matt.
Well, there's a motion with one condition that's been stated,
Right.
and an evidentiary
findings of
basis,
fact, gotcha.
findings are offered and tendered for that. So
Mhm.
I think procedurally, if you wanted to change the motion, there'd have to be a process that the chair would have to walk us through
Mhm.
to do that.
And aren't there already conditions that are attached to this property
My
from the
question,
last one?
can I just ask the question?
Go ahead.
So, you know, the three that I look at as the additional considerations is license with the state, a member of NAR, in-house, live-in coach, manager, whatever you call it. Is that automatically included? It is not. See, now I would think that we would.
Those are factors the board should take into consideration when they're reviewing the request for an accommodation. It might help the board understand the impact on the neighborhood, how the program is run, if there were concerns, or if the board did want to place certain conditions, recognizing that some of those might be very difficult for the city to enforce.
Okay, I'll just be quiet.
What I would wish for is maybe a friendly amendment to the motion to include, I guess, restate all of the previous findings of fact from 2015, which, if I may, for this specific address, that the applicant complies with housing and rooming codes for rooming houses. The applicant shall obtain permits. All of these would still apply with the new zoning requirements, correct? As I'm going through them, it struck me as these apply to previous zoning.
That's a
Previous
question
decision,
for
yeah.
Vince, because this is a new application. So I think it probably would need to be stated in the motion that previous conditions would apply and specifically be added to the motion.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think if, you know, you would want to say all previous conditions stated shall apply to this application to the extent authorized by existing ordinance, right? And
Yeah.
then, and, you know, and the facts or findings should represent that there has been a change probably as well, the additional bathroom, I think, or something. So you don't want to just say all the facts are the same, but you certainly can say the prior conditions.
Prior conditions,
To the
thank you.
extent that they continue to be authorized by ordinance, shall apply. Yeah.
Okay, so those previous conditions, excuse me, thank you, not findings of fact, but the previous conditions that applied at the previous approval of the request in 2015 was, again, the applicant shall comply with housing and rooming codes for rooming houses. The applicant shall obtain permits where required by codes for work already and to be performed at the property, shall arrange for inspection of the work, and shall pass inspections before occupancy under the special exception. The applicant shall upgrade and maintain smoke detectors as required by NAR standards of the building code, and we could say NAR or MAR, because now I'm not sure if MAR was in full existence back then in 2015, but
I think it was, but I have a question, Vince. Sorry, Dan, to
no,
interrupt
please,
you.
I don't mind.
So,
I can allow an interruption.
is it necessary to state as a condition of the approval that the applicant shall comply with housing and rooming codes for rooming houses if the application was approved based on the fact of the existing current number of bedrooms and bathrooms? Because they do comply now, and that was part of the application. So is it necessary? Same with the permits for work previously done.
Right.
There's nothing outstanding at this property that did not have permits.
And there may have been back in 2015.
And there was in
Right.
2015, but
That's
there's
right.
not now. So I don't know if that particular condition is applicable at this time. I mean, otherwise, we could put that condition on every single application that you guys hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you don't want to restate conditions that have no applicability necessarily if circumstances have been resolved. But if there are standards and conditions that we want to make sure are continued to be complied with, like the MAR authority or separate legal authorities that are inspecting, it's certainly appropriate to carry over and acknowledge that those were prior conditions and they should continue to be so as part of an approval at this point.
So some of those conditions from 2015 were specifically things that they needed to work on. The NAR standards for the smoke detectors was above and beyond what the city requires. So they volunteered to have that additional work done, and that's why the board put that condition on there in 2015. So the board can do what you feel you need to do to make sure that they remain in compliance. I did review those standards before I wrote the list of discussion questions. If you think they should apply, go for it. I don't know that some of them are applicable anymore.
Well, the one I do like is the last one, and I believe Randy mentioned it, that they're doing this already. So it really is no material change, is that the applicant shall provide its immediate neighbors with contact information for a representative of the applicant who will be reasonably available to resolve problems. So, again, it's not an undue condition. It's the same condition that there are currently operating under, but again, I'll turn to my colleague who made the initial motion if he's willing to consider an amendment to the motion for any other conditions to the motion.
So help me understand what I would be needing to amend. I would be amending this so that it is in compliance with conditions that were already set at a previous.
I would say
Board of
applicable
Building.
conditions from 2015 to be carried forward. To be carried forward with this special exception.
But I think you guys need to determine which ones are applicable. Because 10 years down the road, when we get a call because there's a violation, and then I have to go back and look at the minutes from this meeting, and then go back and look at the minutes from 2015, in the future, I'm not gonna know what applied or didn't apply. So I think you need to specifically state which conditions you would like carried forward. That helped me out a lot.
Matt, are you seeing the previous conditions?
I can try to
No.
put them on the screen.
This kind of leads into what I was talking about the NAR thing and having,
Right.
because it was raising the bar a little bit, and that's, and if this is the way to get that additional inspection or criteria or whatever, I think that's important to me, because it's over and above, and it's a second set of eyes over and above our.
If the conditions are less, you know, with a request for an expansion of rooms, you know, I think the board would need to make clear that it's their intent to lessen conditions that were previously imposed to get to 6. If you're now at 8, if you want to lessen some conditions, I would say you'd want to make the record clear that you're lessening conditions. Otherwise, the conditions that were there for 6 should still be there. Just because you're asking for 2 more rooms doesn't mean conditions go away unless they go away by operation of, yes, the smoke detectors were fixed or something occurred to make those conditions go away. But I'm less concerned about that. I might be more concerned if you were reducing specifically a condition, you'd really want to make sure that that's clear on the record.
Oh, no, I don't think anybody's interested in reducing anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I guess that's what kind of confused me about having to retroactively go back, is that, well,
Right.
I didn't think that I was basically just coming in and clearing everything else that had ever happened before out, and now we're at a different phase, but this was being added on to. Okay.
Sounds like it's cleaner than when we first started this conversation. Is there amendment required? And I'm not hearing it now that.
So can
Vince-
you say
Vince
that
did.
again, Vince? Did the original findings of fact that are on the screen from 2015,
Well, these are the,
Dan, help him out.
these are the conditions, not necessarily the findings of the fact. These were
These are the
the
findings-
additional conditions that were,
in the findings of fact?
Yeah, those were the list.
that were required for granting the special exception in 2015.
These are the conditions, the board determined that in granting the special exception, it should be and is subject to the following conditions.
Correct.
The applicant shall comply with housing and rooming codes. The applicant shall obtain permits for work, shall arrange for inspections, shall upgrade and maintain smoke detectors. So, the application on the table right now, do these conditions, Vince, add on to the previous application? Or is this a substitute from the previous application?
So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into like an esoteric, you know, I want to make sure this is real for what's there. You know, the existing home had additional rooms with these conditions. And as of right now, those conditions apply. They may have already been satisfied. So that doesn't mean the conditions go away. They're still
Okay.
part of the record and they still apply. If the request is to add 2 rooms, it's not to change any of the conditions or
Okay.
anything. So I would say that because of the request itself is limited to adding rooms and not changing anything upon which it's built right now, those should carry over. But if any of those are specifically not related to or no longer need to be a condition, then I think that's where the board would need to make that very clear. Otherwise, I do believe they should carry over because it was approved. That's the only way you got the 6. And, you know, I think they would survive, but.
So if there are conditions in here that they like, they don't need to specifically add them to the current motion because they still are in place.
That's what I believe. It could be important that they confirm that, but I believe they're still in place, because that's the only way it's there at 6 right now.
Okay,
Is these conditions have to be present.
okay.
Okay, thanks, Vince. So the condition that I initially put on my motion is redundant with one of the items, the existing conditions. So do I need to alter my condition to say that I want to honor the conditions from, my condition is that we honor the conditions from the previous? Or are we just getting rid of that condition because they already apply?
I mean, I think it's okay to say we don't want to lessen any prior conditions as previously stated. And if those conditions were satisfied by some occurrence, that doesn't, it's no additional burden. I mean, you know, if a fire stuff or smoke alarms were installed, I guess I'm not, if that helps or not. I think it's appropriate to say your motion is to acknowledge existing conditions on the prior application survive to the extent that they remain applicable.
Yes, okay. Right, clear as mud. Right, clear as mud.
Are we clear on our motion?
What he said.
That's a question for the attorney, because he does the findings of fact.
And that's
So
what,
if
that
he's happy
was a
with your
question for the
motion-
attorney. Are we clear on our motion?
To the extent any conditions, prior conditions remain applicable, the intent is that the motion to approve to 8, that those conditions will carry over to this approval that's proposed, is what I've heard.
Right. It is, all right, so it will, the prior conditions carry forward. So my motion is to approve. I've done my findings of fact. I had a condition initially with this, but it is redundant.
Right.
So no condition is following with this current motion for approval.
No additional conditions.
Correct.
Okay. And still support? Mr. Fusak?
Still support.
All right. Any other deliberation?
This is fun.
Then let's go for a roll call vote.
All right, the motion is to approve. Davis,
Yes.
Fusak,
Yes.
Bedard,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Sorek.
Yes.
Motion to approve passes.
Okay. And now,
Two more.
two more.
Yeah, we have to do everything all over again, right?
Yes, to some extent. So, do you want to go ahead and read the next one?
Sure, so this is for 47 West 17th Street, application number 22.12Z. Randy Brower, on behalf of Building Men for Life, is requesting a special exception for a housing accommodation to operate a recovery residency at 47 West 17th Street. He is requesting 5 unrelated persons to live together as a family where 4 are allowed. The Board of Appeals may approve this request if certain conditions are met.
All right. Is there any specific questions that we would like to ask our applicant, or could we just go to a public hearing on this one?
I'm good with the public hearing.
All right, then I'll open a public hearing for 47 West 17th Street. Anybody who wishes to speak on behalf for approval of this, go ahead and please come up. Anybody who wishes to speak against this, we also ask them. Okay, go ahead.
So, my name's Chris Muchler. I live at 40 West 17th Street, across the street with my wife and 2 kids. We do not live in a rental. And honestly, I don't know at this point, the thing about, coming up and telling, no notification whatsoever of any of this up to this point. So I don't know if this is a new location or what the situation is with that. But this is the first news of this that I have heard. So from my perspective, it is, the whole NIMBY thing, I kind of get it, but I kind of reject that characterization in this scenario, because I'm not talking about a financial issue. I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm talking about pretty much the only disability that can be positively correlated with criminal or erratic behavior. Okay? This is, so, I'm an engineer. You can sit there and say probabilities. Probability of recovery being successful. Probability of, living in an area where there's places to accommodate whatever your issue is. Like the place to get liquor right up the street, or the free weed guy on the corner. So from my standpoint, I reject that. This is not about low-income housing. This is about having my kids across the street from people that have an issue that can result in criminal or erratic behavior. I have a son and I have a daughter. So that is my concern. The other thing about it is that the idea that, I understand the idea of the concept of a disability, and I understand the legal concept, but at the same time, we're sitting there saying, well, how long does that last? Can you use that if you've been 20 years sober? Can you say, I have a disability and live in that building in a group setting for how long? Where does that end? I don't see how that works. So to a certain extent, I'm looking at this and saying, I don't doubt that there's a need for this. I don't like the idea that there's no notification or any kind of process that this is gonna happen and that this is the first I hear about it. There's nothing in the city that treats that any differently than 4 or 5 random guys moving into an accommodation that's supposed to, that is zoned family, if I'm not, or residential, if I'm not mistaken, where it is acting as an organization or a business. And I live in a house that is not, I couldn't sell that to a business that wanted to open a business on 17th and River. I couldn't open a business there. I don't have that option. No one's given me that option. That might be a good location for a business if we're saying it's not residential. So that's my question is, where is the line on this? How can there be no cap on the idea of it being a disability? Especially if it's something that accommodates lower than market housing. So that's my problem, and I also want to know, how does the city handle this? Because this is also not just me expressing frustration and wondering about a little bit of a loophole-y aspect of this, but it's also, why doesn't the city have anything in place to notify people or to let people know what's going on? Because unless this is something that just happened, which is entirely possible, it could be a lease came up, they're doing this, but there's nobody that's like, hey, we're doing this. This is not a family moving in here. This is an organization, a not-for-profit or nonprofit organization that is moving in this building, and they are housing people for something where it's nonprofit, but people are being paid. People are being, there's money going into, there's income being made at the location. So there's my thing here. So what's the story here, I guess, is on my end. Is this a new recovery plan? Or is this, it's been there and no one said anything when I mean, I've lived there since 2019.
I don't know
So,
what the timing is.
Do you want me to answer those
If
questions?
you would, I will make one comment that you said about 4 or 5 guys moving into a house. The definition of a family is 4 unrelated.
right,
I'm just letting you know that's actually a criteria
right.
for a family. And then the other answer, please.
So this is classified as a single-family home. So in the city's definition of a family, one family may occupy a single-family home or one dwelling unit. The definition of a family is related by marriage, blood, birth, blah, 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 or 4 unrelated people.
Okay,
So 4 unrelated people are currently living here, and could be, and nobody notifies anybody about that. So
Right.
you only get notified when there's going to be more than 4.
Okay.
And these folks are here requesting special permission for their folks in the program, and it's not considered a commercial use. It is considered still a single-family home because people live there, that's their residence. They establish residency. So if they're part of the program and they live here, they have to follow the same occupancy regulations as everybody else does. And it's a place where people live. So they are part of a program, but it's their home.
The
So
house
the request is
the
for
house
one more.
manager is not a paid employee?
Oh, I don't have any idea, but they live there. So we don't look at the organization and how they're paid. We only look at how the property is used.
Okay.
Is somebody running a business out of there, or are they using it for their home?
And it
So
could,
could I run a business out of my home there?
You may absolutely have a home business. We have separate rules for home businesses.
So, but if I lived upstairs and had a store downstairs, that would be acceptable?
We would have to look at what you
I-
want to do and the regulations and then determine.
There
what-
are
But we
different-
do allow home businesses.
there are different code regulations, and there are many home-based occupations. Hairstylists is very common throughout
Okay.
the city, and there are rules and regulations that those individuals need to follow in accordance with zoning rules and regulations. So there are a lot of home-based occupations in
Okay. Okay,
many urban areas, including Holland.
okay.
And Dan Tiley, our zoning administrator, is reminding me too that this part of our ordinance that allows us to look at housing accommodations is part of the fair housing regulations for the state of Michigan.
Right.
So the state requires us.
I get that you guys can't do that. I do question the idea that and this may not be a question for here, but I do question the idea that it can be an eternal disability if you've been sober for X amount of time.
And that would be on their certification and their program to manage that. I will
Right.
also say that all of our rental properties in the city of Holland and the recovery residences also, we do require them to notify the neighbors across the street and on each side, but not like the entire block. So if you're a couple houses down,
I'm
you may
literally
not have
across
been
the street.
notified. Right, but if they're approved for the accommodation, if they're approved for the accommodation, they are required to reach out to you if you're across the
Okay,
street.
so this is a new, so no
This
one's
is-
saying it, but.
this is a new
No,
use.
Which I find kind of funny, but this is, let's all establish this. This is a new situation, right?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Yeah, the 4 people moved in legally as underneath the existing code. They're asking for one more person, which
Right.
throws it into the zoning board. to
Mm-hmm. And that is a
decide
new,
if certain
this is a
things-
new, brand new request.
For
Okay.
this, I'm sorry, I know it.
Yeah, I understand.
For this house, there
Okay.
are numerous houses like this throughout the city.
Understood. What I was just saying is that you mentioned the idea of some sort of notification or even on there, nothing. So the idea that there was any notification before, during, or after never happened.
Those conditions applied to those that had to have special exceptions, where
Okay.
there was additional above and beyond the 4 unrelated. So
Okay.
again, it could be 4 college
I get
roommates
that.
living together, and there's no requirement to notify anybody.
Right.
But as soon as a 5th unrelated person moves
Right.
in, then it's a violation of the zoning, and that's where the city does
So
their job
if
in
the
enforcement.
board- So if the board approves the request tonight, then they will need to notify you, and then you should see something in the future.
And then that's after the fact though, right? So-
Yes.
Right, but you also got notified from the city, correct, before this meeting?
For the meeting, yes, I
Right.
did.
Which is to
That's-
approve this.
Right.
It's not yet approved.
Correct. I think the thing is that the idea that if there's something of that nature that is going in there, like, I know you're saying about 4 college kids, and I know that 4 college kids I've lived in other places like that, but it seems like when you just, even from an objective manner of looking at the probability of different type of things, somebody's gonna be concerned about that, more than even college kids. Because maybe one of those college kids is a whatever, or 2 of them, or any of that. it's not the same thing as as a situation where, you know, there's, limiting behavior that's going on. You know, I'm not gonna, but any kind of limiting behavior, where it's beyond, I mean, there's no doubt you have binge drinking, you have all kind of other stuff in college kids or whatever, but it's still not quite the same thing. It's also, I guess the college kid thing, you would say, well, the college is way over there, and, that's not exactly what we were, I mean, so I've lived over there, I've rented a house over there. I know what I'm getting into. This is not the exact same thing. I don't think anybody here really thinks it's the same thing. So, and twice a month for drug testing, I guess, whatever, but that's not, I mean, that's a lot of time in between. If and it all depends on what's going on and what your situation is, but, again, it's, and I get it. This isn't like a situation, my issue with it is that if you concentrate people with those same kind of issues in an area with access to some of the things that contribute to those kind of issues, it doesn't seem like the most logical environment. And that's exactly what it is, because the people in the areas where it's not conducive like that don't want it to be there, and it doesn't happen.
Have you had any issues with the neighbors across the street while there was an occupancy of 4?
No.
Okay.
But I don't know how long that's actually occurred. And no one has divulged that, so.
So they operated, I hope
If you tell me they've been there for 2 or 3 years, I get it.
I think that after this, you will, I hope, be a little bit more calm about it, and I think you'll be a little bit more understanding. Especially, I would encourage you to talk to Randy afterwards to get more information, because, I can understand if you've got kids there and suddenly you're being told, hey, the property across the street, I thought that they were just for people, regular unrelated people,
Right.
but now I'm finding out that they're addicts trying to recover.
Correct.
That is worthy of note, is that I have had neighbors who are addicts that are not trained.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not saying that doesn't occur.
Those fellas in that residence are specifically there. They are paying to be there so that they can quit. They want a safe environment. And not only have we had this location, but we are also going to have to talk about the fact that this location is within 500 feet of another location. So there are
That's
two
a whole other
locations
thing.
close to you, and you haven't had a real trouble with them, because you just told me that the guys across the street, you haven't had a big kerfuffle with anybody across the street at this point, right?
Quite frankly, if you say, hey, it's been under operation since you've been there, and you haven't had an issue, then we're fine. I think it's more the idea that this is the first I've heard of it, and if that's the case, to some extent, I'm a little bit, that's probably something that might be good to know if you're looking at buying a house or something, but at that point, I'm like, okay, whatever, right? But I don't know that that's the case. I don't believe that it is an old situation, because if I'm not mistaken, I believe that I received a package from the people that lived in that house, and one of them was a woman, unless it was a different house. But I'm pretty sure it was that house.
Yeah. I mean,
So
and you should talk to Randy about it for sure, and you should meet your neighbors and engage with them. Don't just
When he makes contact with you, it'd be a great idea to get his telephone number and access. So if you ever have any problems over there, he can be your first call. He can be the hall monitor.
well, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that the public comment proceed. I understand you want to leave a great latitude for information, which you have the prerogative as chair, but this is still the public comment period to receive information and not have necessarily dialogue.
It's not a debate,
Right.
right. You're expressing your views.
Right.
We appreciate your views. Do you have any other further?
Well, again, if it's a situation where there's no sort of notification or any requirement of notification up until now, then that's just a situation of what it is. So, and evidently, how would I put this? And I'm gonna go on the assumption that this is a new thing, or else somebody would say, look, it's been 3 years and it isn't an issue. So,
Okay.
maybe you can't say it, and that's all right. But, well, whatever. Good enough. You've heard what I have to say. I think some of this is out of your purview, but I did, like I said about the, you know, it's not in my backyard. It's just like, why always? And you know, so whatever. And it's not against any of the people. It's the point of the idea that it's the same as low income, or it's not the same. It's not. It's a very logical, whatever, assessment of it. And it's hard. It's not like I don't empathize with that. It's just that it's a reality is that recovery is successful X% of the time. And it's not a huge, right? So, you know, whatever. Okay, it's not gonna help.
All right. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In our paperwork that we received, or does staff know how far those notifications, how far does the organization reach out and give notice, or say, hello, I'm the new neighbor in town, and give cards? I mean, you know, we have our 300-foot that we say we're doing something. In this particular case, is it required for them to go to every neighbor?
No.
That's a service that they do to be a good neighbor.
Our housing code requires the house on each side of you.
Okay.
And across the street.
Okay, very good.
And I was just looking for those previous findings of fact. Oh, that's right. We don't have conditions on this one. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition of this application? Okay. I would ask, there is an opportunity here in the public hearing to ask if the applicant would like to rebut anything, as opposed, you know, in relation to what they've heard. Is there any rebuttal necessary?
Rebuttal to what
Correct.
neighbor said?
The concerned neighbor. Please, yeah, because we do record these, and it's helpful for meeting minutes and things to speak into the microphone.
Okay. All right, so just to answer on the neighbor, you're at 40, are you in the corner?
Yeah.
Beautiful house. Blue, got a nice swing on the porch?
It
I like his house.
it's not blue, it's
Oh.
white,
It's white?
yeah, and there's
Okay.
not a porch, so
No swing on the porch?
Randy, you do have to address the board.
Okay.
Comments to the board.
So anyway, my comments is that he is kind of kitty corner from the house, but I would definitely reach out to him if we get the exemption to have one extra guy there. We've been there for 3 months, I think, since the last fellow moved out. Yeah, other than that, I know as far as addictions, my addiction is gonna be with me my whole life, so I have to be on guard. I still attend at least 3 meetings a week for my addiction. Most of it is reaching out to the jail or to the treatment centers. But I would be afraid to let up on my recovery because it's gonna stay with me. It's an easy slope to slide back down, and I see so many guys do it, so. Yeah, that's it. We want to be good neighbors, so.
No, I think
And-
the one thing I wanted to give you the opportunity for was how long you've been operating there with four,
Yep,
where there is no requirement to notify the neighbors.
3 months.
Okay.
And house manager there is not compensated. He does it because he wants to give back. So, all right.
Thank you. All right, any other comments? Then I will declare the public hearing closed, and we will move into deliberation or hopefully a motion on 47 West 17th Street. Recognizing that there is no previous.
Right, right. I guess the question for the board, or the discussion anyway, is does the 500 feet play a role in this conversation at all? That we talked about earlier. I don't know how you're feeling about that, Brad.
I don't know that it does. I think it's a little different too, that this is a level 2 house.
Right.
After we learned about the differences between level 1 and level 2.
Yeah, and I looked at it differently also. I started looking at the concentration in the house, you know, how many square feet per person and all that kind of stuff, and so, that doesn't bother me.
I think the fact that we should consider that is important, and I think that we consider it, but I think it would be more applicable in my mind on the 500-foot rule as if there were 3 on the same street facing each other.
Right.
Or even 2 or 3 concentrated next to each other. You know, and I understand some of the other alternatives that we discussed in our pre-meeting about a 500-foot rule applying for short-term rentals, and that would be more for a prevention of concentration of, shall we say, alternative businesses that don't fall under traditional housing, if you will, that are far more temporary. So, in this case, I think this is a little bit more stable. Hearing the description about the length of stay also and the turnover. Yes, there is turnover, but the length of stay, 6 months to 2 years, I've seen many families turn over, family homes turn over in that amount of time too.
Well, I think there's still the option in the future, should they come back, say it's gonna be level 1, they want more people in there, so on and so forth. The 500 rule still sticks.
Correct.
I mean, you have an opportunity to revisit that, should in fact the use of this house changes to a level 2, or additional people requested, et cetera.
I make a motion to approve.
Support.
We have a motion, we have support. Any other additional factors to consider?
With conditions.
Okay. Before your support, we'll ask for that again.
Sorry, so, support with, to approve 5 unrelated persons in this 5-bedroom house at 47 West 17th Street, with the conditions that, the special exception shall only be used, by or for persons with disabilities. Based on the applicant's representation that will only house persons with disabilities. This special exception shall not allow the residence to be occupied by persons without disabilities without complying with the 4 unrelated adult limitation in the zoning code. The applicant shall provide its immediate neighbors with contact information for a representative of the applicant who will be reasonably available to resolve any issues.
I think we've discussed that previously, that the notice would be to, you said the immediate neighbors either side and across the street?
He said it correctly.
Yeah, I like that.
And then the final condition is that the applicant shall maintain the standards and codes required by an entity such as NAR or MAR, which I imagine they're already doing. If it's a city rental, they have to be up to code as well. That is it.
Do I support now and then he does findings of facts? I support you again, Brad.
Thank you.
All right.
And my findings of fact, so is the request accommodation for a group of individuals with a disability that's protected under fair housing laws? That is yes. Is the accommodation necessary to make houses available for these individuals? Yes. We learned that there's a waiting list and they need these beds, these rooms. Will the housing be used only by persons with a disability? Yes. Does the accommodation impose an undue financial administrative burden on the city? We discussed this previously with the last one. I think that's no. Does the request require fundamental alteration in the nature of the city's zoning program? No. Is there an alternative accommodation which may provide an equivalent level of benefit to the applicant? Given the need, we believe this is no.
All right.
I'm satisfied with.
We have our motion, we have support, we have findings of fact. Anything else to discuss? Matt?
The conditions that were added, are they identical to our previous application from 2015 for the previous residents? Are we missing any that we need to add, perhaps?
Not me. If you think we need to amend it, then we can.
Staff shaking your head.
I don't
I
see
think
any.
it's good.
Yeah, I think we're very, the intent is there, so.
Yeah, no, I think those conditions, the ones not mentioned from the prior application concerned more unique conditions that were, what I understand, more applicable to the 2015 request for a different property.
Correct. Okay, then I will look for a roll call vote then.
So the motion is to approve with the conditions: Fusak,
Yes.
Bedard,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Barr,
Yes.
Sorick.
Yes.
Motion to approve passes.
Okay, and our third item, 439 West 21st Street.
Yes, this is for application number 2213Z, which the address 439 West 21st Street. Randy Brower, on behalf of Building Men for Life, is requesting a special exception for a housing accommodation to operate a recovery residency at 439 West 21st Street. He is requesting 10 unrelated persons to live together as a family, where 6 were previously approved. The Board of Appeals may approve this request if certain conditions are met.
Thank you. Real quick question for you, Mallory. These are all labeled 22-11, 12, 13 from the year 2022, and then the Z, is that for zoning?
Yes.
So
it is for
do we do an
zoning.
H for housing? And
Yes.
so are these housing, they are zoning?
If you look at the section numbers
Okay,
that go with each application,
39-9.
they're out of chapter 39,
Got
which
it.
is the zoning ordinance.
all right, thank you.
Housing will be out of chapter 14.
Okay. So, sorry, just, I'm looking at our guidance document and I see special exception housing accommodation and I was thinking, okay, sorry. That is good advice, thank you. Now, I will ask our board real quickly, is there anything unique that we would like to ask of our applicant at this time before I go to a public hearing? Not seeing any, I will go to a public hearing and open it up. Anybody who wishes to speak on behalf of, in favor of this application, please come to the podium. Anybody who wishes to speak in opposition of this, please. Again, please state your name and your address.
My name is Rosalie Austin. I live at 457 West 21st Street since 1997. I am a homeowner. I'm a single parent, raised 3 beautiful daughters in our home. My middle daughter is 30 years old and severely handicapped. I have lived in my home since 2015. I was an opposer, a NIMBY since 2015 because my daughter is vulnerable. And it's near the schools, 3 different schools. And there's a lot of neighborhood kids. There's also convicted sex offenders that move in and out of there. I have no problem with recovery housing per se. I'm all about a drug and alcohol-free lifestyle. I wish Sean Locke could live there instead of knocking doors constantly begging for money. But I do not support 10 men living in one home. 6 is enough. 4 should be stick to the 4. And I am not comfortable with 10 men building men for life in my neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you.
Joyce Mott, 68 West 15th Street. I think the issue with this particular house is the sheer density. Even a family of 10 would be a lot of people in one home. And we went through this in 2015 when they originally asked for 11 people in 11 different homes. And I suspect that they will come back, if this is approved, come back with this sort of request, which is just simply not practical, especially for people like Rosie who have just really had to endure some hardships about it.
Anybody else? And to be clear, we didn't receive any other communications, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And anything that the applicant would like to rebut on this while the public hearing is open?
Yeah, I would just like to, my name's Randy, and I'd just like to say that particular house, 439, is a property that is owned by Building Men for Life. At the time we were here before, we were granted 6, and we did add a bathroom in the basement. So that house now has 3 full baths. The house manager does have his own bathroom connected to his room. And then the basement has the 3 egress windows to comply with all the city codes. And then the additional bathroom was installed downstairs. So the last time we were here, we only had 2 full baths, 2 upstairs, none downstairs. That's why we're asking for reasonable accommodations. There's plenty of space, plenty of rooms to house 10. That's what I have.
Thank you. Any other comments before I close the public hearing? All right, the public hearing is now closed, and we will move to deliberation for the request for 10 unrelated persons, where 6 were previously approved at 439 West 21st Street.
Question about the 2 new, there's 2 new bedrooms in the basement, so that says it's approved 2016. Could we, is it confirmed? They've got that approved by city?
Yes, that's correct. They're legal bedrooms with egress windows.
But there's an issue with, the plumbing in the basement bathroom. Well, what's going on with that?
Yep. The bathroom was previously plumbed, so the plumbing guts, for lack of a better term, were already in the walls and the floor. There were fixtures added, so they do need to get a permit for those plumbing fixtures that were added in the basement.
Okay. And will we need to deal with that now, or is that going to be dealt with separately with housing?
I've already talked to Randy about it. He is aware of the requirement. He was gonna get in touch with his plumber. If the board approves the application that's on the table tonight, I would recommend they add that as a condition. If the application is denied, we'll handle it in our office.
Okay.
in study session, I was kind of voicing some concern about density, and I think you might have heard it earlier when we were talking about it, the questions that were being asked, those types of things. I take nothing away from the program or anything like that, but I think our responsibility is to try not to impact the neighborhood as much as possible. And my gut tells me, and I don't know how this legally works quite yet, but my gut tells me that 10 people is just too many, whether the house accommodates it or not. I'll just leave it there for now and let the discussion go, but that's kind of how I'm feeling about it. I don't know what legal standing I have. I don't know what I base my objection to that number. Whether there's another number, I don't know. But I don't know the size of the houses there, and I mean, are they all the smaller homes? I know the other homes. When we were talking about 16th and 17th Street, in my mind, I looked at it and said, these houses are kind of big houses, and they can accommodate some people. And they're resemble the houses around them because they're all kind of big. Those early 1900 houses, 20s, 30s, whatever they may be. I think this house and where it sits in this particular neighborhood is a different situation, and I have some concern there.
Yeah, we're talking about density and how people move in and out of the neighborhood and how the neighborhood views it. And we've seen here tonight even some neighbors that have come in to voice that concern to us. And I believe that is something we need to take into consideration as we move forward.
Any other discussions on this one in particular that would lead to a motion?
Do we have the floor plans available to be shown?
Yeah. It's a big house. It's 1,400 square feet. On the
Well, hold
first-
on. You were just making it sound like it was a small house, and that was why you were
I
concerned.
was saying it was a larger house compared to the houses around it, is what my point was. And that, in fact, the density of the individual homes in the neighborhood would probably be maybe 75% of the people versus what would be in this home. And that's where the makeup of the homes would be different also, could be different. Two parents, maybe an adult or two sibling, or kids, and maybe some youngers, but to be 10 males or that type of configuration being prevalent in that neighborhood would probably really not exist. And that's where that mismatch in my mind, that's kind of where I'm viewing that. So that's where I'm coming from.
Is your density concern with cars that maybe we
No.
would need to have a?
I think the car situation is a conversation, but I'm thinking about the makeup of the family structure, for lack of a better term, the residents in whatever structure we claim after, because we say 4 as a family, but you can have more if they're disabled. I don't know if you put the label on it, family or not, but the people in the residence, that makeup is different, and most likely, in my mind, not significantly, but definitely larger than the remaining homes on the block.
And we're not, I guess we would be allowed to make an accommodation for something other than 10. Then, the request was for 10. So just throwing that out there.
Right.
Yeah, so this is a ranch house. Hopefully everybody had a chance to drive by it today.
Yeah.
I have the
Yeah.
floor plan up. Sorry, it's crooked. I don't know how to.
Yeah, I looked it up. It's like 1,400 on the first floor, and I assume majority of the basement is at least partially finished,
Yeah.
obviously, because you got rooms and you got probably some finished space to get to those rooms, et cetera. I don't deny the house is probably big enough. I'm saying that, in my opinion, that concentration of that population may be a little out of place in that neighborhood. Don't know what that means criteria-wise, or findings of fact, or whatever, but I'm putting it out there for discussion.
And this is the basement floor plan here.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess just to kind of address your concerns.
Sure.
I'm just thinking about, it's fresh on my mind because we're just doing it now. My wife and I are finishing a bedroom in our basement right now, like right now. The contractor's talking to Tricia probably. Anyway, so it's.
No permit? What?
So, it's, so, it's on my mind, and it's interesting to think about that this is not expanding the house upward. He's not building a floor. We're not building an ADU. We're not expanding the home. Where we're going is down. And I guess, in my mind, my concern with density would be suddenly so if there's 10 guys there, 10 cars, like that would be extreme.
And I'm not saying
in a
that.
house. And then, to me, that would be, okay, well, we need to make a condition on this of like, this is taking up so much extra space now. But if the house and the bones are staying the same, and there's just a few more people in them, I struggle with having that counteract the findings of fact that we would have, the questions that we have to ask to approve or deny this, because they're filling out an existing facility. They're not encroaching into new boundaries. They're not getting closer to the neighbors, and they're not. I mean, the car thing is the only hitch that I have with
No,
it.
I'm not
is
even
this-
citing
I'm
the
not
cars,
even
so.
sure how we regulate the cars in that situation.
Right. Yeah, I'm
Because
sure
that
we could
If I
put
was
some
a neighbor there,
criteria
that
on
could be
it.
really annoying.
Yeah, we could
for
put
sure.
criteria on it. I think we talked about that earlier, about how many cars, that type of thing. I'm not talking cars. I'm talking the request from 6 to 10. And
I'm talking about 10 guys that are going back and forth to work, where you have, typically maybe just one family of two adults that are going back and forth to work, going out to get groceries and coming back. All the movement of 10 guys living in one place, I think, is something from the density standpoint that has me concerned.
And this was a level 1 house that we talked about earlier. Tricia, could you show that basement floor plan again? And I must have missed this in our packet. Was this in our packet? It was.
Yeah.
Okay.
there was a lot of pages.
I didn't scroll down that far, maybe. Sorry. Yeah, because as shown, there's 11 beds in this house. So they're asking for 10.
I can do math, my friend.
I know. All right.
Remedial math, but I can do math.
So I'm looking for a motion here.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion to approve. Now, no conditions on this, as the first item we reviewed, also had additional conditions are being proposed with this motion. So if you guys want to add something, let me know, and I'll amend it. But right now, this is just a motion for approval.
Of 10.
Yes.
Matthew, are you motioning for approval for 10, just so that we know
Yeah,
that that's?
yeah,
what
yes.
you're- I'm sorry. what was that?
I'm not hearing any support. So I think we can either have a substitute motion, or we support it and not approve it.
My issue is if my motion goes in, I don't know how to define the facts. So,
There's professionals here that can help you with that.
or we support it and vote on it and see what happens.
Yeah, if there is no support for the motion, it can be withdrawn.
And the same person could theoretically submit another motion, but the person who made the motion has, I guess they could speak to their motion until it's been seconded. Their own motion.
All right, well, seeing no support, I will withdraw my motion.
Now I'm gonna need some help. Let me think about it for a minute here.
Maybe we can help you out. How would you like to craft your motion?
Well, I would like to craft it as making a motion to deny
I would just throw it.
the request for 10.
But to approve something else.
That's not in my motion.
Okay.
My theoretical motion that I haven't made yet. Just saying.
You know, the chair is able to make a motion, and I
Go for it, buddy.
I will make a motion to approve the request at 8 unrelated persons to live together, given there are 6 bedrooms in this proposed facility, or, proposed house, and too many screens open. I'm trying to get back to my floor plan. 3 bedrooms in the basement, 3 bedrooms upstairs, and it offers a blend of, kind of I understand it's a level 1 in their terms, but I was gonna go with 8 unrelated persons to allow for 2 additional, to be for reasonable accommodations, and using the same conditions that were approved back when it was extended from 4 to 6 in 2015. This would be similar to what we just approved for 80 West 16th Street.
Is it possible to, I'll forget it.
Do you have any conditions on that, Dan?
The condition, one condition would be that it would only be used for persons with disabilities. Non-disabled people would be limited to not more than 4 unrelated people. That the residents would be a certified, member of an entity that conducts its own inspections, such as NAR or MAR.
Or would you use the conditions that were previously imposed in
I thought I had
2015?
said that before.
I did hear him say that.
Yeah, based on the same conditions as previously applied, or those that would be applicable and applied in 2015.
Support.
All right, motion, support. Now we have something to work with. So, any other discussion on this?
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
do want to discuss, because we did just approve for 8, so the motion is now altered, that we would not do 10 unrelated persons, but that we do 8. We approved our first item with 8 as well. However, I will note that there's 1 more bedroom and there's 1 more full bathroom in this in this abode. I'm just thinking about growing up with 4 people in a house and 1 full bathroom, and we made it work. And so that ratio is actually even nicer than what I grew up with. The bedroom situation is, I think, reflecting primarily the level 1 nature of the house, but it will not be 2 to every single bedroom. There will be, what would that be? 1 or 2 bedrooms that will just have a single person in there. One of them would be the manager, and one of them would be maybe a level 2 guy or something like that. So just living there.
I would also remind you, though, that the difference with this house is you had 2 members of the public that live in the neighborhood that expressed concerns about the number of occupants. And we did not have anybody express any concerns about the house at 80 West 16th. So I think public comment and concerns should also be taken into consideration by the board.
I think also the financials. I know we didn't get that much detail individually on each and every house, but you can kind of do the simple math in your head on these houses. And this house is owned by Building Men for Life, but you could do the simple math and determine that the finance, and even from the candidate, candidate, that this isn't absolutely necessary to make the numbers balance.
I just struggle to see taking finances into account when our questions that we have to do for findings of fact don't say, well, can they financially do this or not? We don't do that with other businesses.
Right,
You know,
the financial component is the necessary component, right? And that's based on the Federal Fair Housing Act in the case law applicable to those considerations. And the consideration is making accommodations that are necessary and reasonable. So the reasonableness component certainly can take into consideration the totality of the circumstances, the neighborhood, the effect on the community, the burden on a community. But the other component is the necessity. Is the accommodation necessary to allow persons with disabilities to live in a single-family home? And what is necessary? Well, is it necessary to have 10, or is it necessary to have the 6? How much? 7, 8, 9, or 10? Why more? Why does that make it necessary? Did you hear evidence? Did you hear explanations as to why a greater number meets the necessity requirement when maybe a lesser number already satisfies it? Yeah, and so that's the necessity is that's where the financial stuff comes into play, sort of as that sort of the other component of what should be considered in these types of applications.
Okay. We did establish with the applicant that there is a need and there is a waiting list for this housing. And yeah, due to the questions that we have to ask and my not being able to answer them in a way that would alter the number, I'm also just uncomfortable with telling 2 guys with addictions that are trying to get better and come back into our community and rehab, become productive members of our city, that, well, you know, no, you can't get better here. Well, not 2 more of you. You know, sorry, because there were feelings. People said that they didn't feel like having 2 more guys rehab near them was okay. Yeah, I struggle with that. I really do.
We have heard that the need, the waiting list is anywhere between 5 and 15 people. Tonight's, with the 2 previously approved, that added 3. This would add 2 more. That would take 5. That would bring an additional 5, ideally off of that waiting list, or take 5 off that waiting list, pretty quickly here. So I think we're meeting the minimum standard of that waiting list. I'd love to be able to accommodate everybody, but hopefully the economics play out where the housing situation, I don't want to say bottoms out. Sorry for those in that business, in that industry, but to the point where it does become economically feasible for this nonprofit to acquire another home or lease on another home to meet their needs of the community. Or maybe somewhere in, you know, in the township or something like that. I mean, it doesn't exactly have to be in the city, of course. And it's, you know, one thing that was mentioned earlier is, you know, the clients are usually from Ottawa County. And one thing I've had to remind many people is that half of the city of Holland is in Allegan County. I'm not sure if it's equally half. I mean, it's roughly half of the city is actually Allegan County. So, you know, there's plenty of need, I'm sure, in Allegan County as well. So I think what we're doing here is a good service. You know, I have yet to go through all my findings of fact on my motion here, but David, it looks like you.
Well, I'm a proud citizen of Ottawa, or Allegan County, excuse me. We've talked a lot about the need and expressed a concern for people to help recoveries. We need to also equally talk about the need to protect and to serve the residents of that community. And we've had residents come to us today and say, hey, we have a concern. And we equally need to take that into consideration as we move forward. And I feel some of that. I really feel with the density issue of 10 guys in a single home has the possibility to be a burden to the neighborhood. And
How?
Pardon me?
How would it be a burden to
Well,
have two
I
more
believe,
guys?
you know, it could be traffic, could be people just, like I said, different shifts of jobs that are working, people moving about that the neighborhood's not used to that type of thing. So that's where my decision or my thought process is. I really want to try to get into the head of what that neighborhood would look like with one home with 10 guys.
On the flip side to the question of how these homes could accommodate, this home could accommodate up to 12 people. The 47 West 17th could accommodate up to 10 people. 80 West 16th could accommodate up to 12 people as is. And they're not, you know, they have not requested the very maximum that these homes could have. And I think this was a reasonable accommodation to go with 8. Just more of my, going for my support for this motion here.
Okay. I mean, I'll still support 8. I just like to support 10.
Understood. That motion did not have support, though.
Yep.
From the other 4 members.
Yep.
So, any other discussion? Then we will take a roll call vote on the motion.
Do you want to do?
I apologize. I just realized.
You're not getting off that light,
I
buddy.
just realized it before I said that. Yes, thank you. So findings of fact, and it's up to me to play these out. That the requested accommodation for a group of individuals with a disability that's protected under fair housing laws, that this did meet that. This accommodation is necessary to make housing available for these individuals. Yes, the housing will only be used by persons with a disability. I do believe that this accommodation does not impose an undue financial or administrative burden on the city. The request does not require a fundamental alteration in the nature of the city's zoning program, and I do not believe that there is an alternative accommodation which may provide an equivalent level of benefit to the applicant. So, All right, now I think we'll move to a roll call vote.
All right, the motion is to approve 8 unrelated people. Sorick,
Yes.
Fusak,
Yes.
Farr,
No.
Davis,
Yes.
Bedard.
No.
Motion fails.
Motion fails.
Okay. All right, that's, I think
Looking for a motion?
we could be looking for another motion on this one.
That's what I was gonna say.
I think if
I think this is done. I think we've made the motion.
a motion was made and seconded and considered
And
and
voted.
voted on,
So we move on to the next item on the agenda.
Just a second. We did, let's see here. Couldn't we do a motion for 7? I'm not saying you should do it, I'm just saying, is there another motion? Because you can approve anything 10 or less. And we voted on 10, and we voted on 8, right?
We voted on 8. We had no support for a 10.
Right. So are there any other motions?
I think that is fair because there's obviously a range here. It's a little unusual. Normally you have like a variance application
6.5?
without
Anybody?
range, but, I think I'll leave it to the chair that, to the extent there is a range that has not been considered, that's within the range of a request, the chair could consider another motion to that extent.
I will consider another motion. But I'm not seeing any of my other board members moving. I'm not. I've done my motions for the year.
I'm going to make a motion that we deny the application at 439 West 21st Street.
I don't think he needs to, does he?
No, it's not, that's not
Unless somebody
necessary.
makes a motion in
We've
favor,
already,
it's
this,
done.
this is effectively denied.
I don't want it to change.
Okay. Well, withdraw your motion. No, you don't have to, but you can. If you don't, if no one else speaks up, I mean.
I'm not seeing any support for that motion either, so. I think I think,
Okay.
Yeah, the conditions will stay the same without an affirmative motion to change them.
Okay. So
it's
then
not
I
as
guess
if-
I
it's not a
withdraw
new-
that.
okay.
So we don't have to deny the application?
No,
So
it's,
not
no, the
doing
motion,
anything is-
the motion to approve 8 failed. So
Mhm.
the request is denied.
Oh, I thought we had to make a motion to deny in order to deny one.
No.
Okay.
No.
When it's not fully executed, then.
If the
We
motion to
have to-
approve fails, it automatically is denied.
Right. Remember, we have to have 4 concurring members to approve,
Right, per quorum.
Yeah.
and we only had 3.
So then if the motion is off the table, then it reverts back to the 6 approved,
Correct.
and they're approved for 6. And if they want to refile another application, Vince, I believe they need to wait 6 months or some substantial change to something at the property.
Yeah, I have to get on, I'll have to look.
I think it's 6 months.
You'll inform the applicant. Correct. Okay.
Yes.
So, next item on our agenda is the approval of our meeting minutes from September 22nd, 2022.
Make a motion, we approve.
Support.
We have motion, support. All those in favor of approving the minutes from our September 2022 meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Our next meeting date is January 26, 2023. And I'm looking for one last motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. Thank you.